Good morning. I'm so pleased to be with you this Sunday morning, which, in the interest of full disclosure, is really being taped on Wednesday. Thank you, Elena, for inviting me to join in this beloved community. This month has provided quite a backdrop for you all to remember and celebrate your ONA anniversary. Most of us in the UCC start our services with the same opening. Whoever you are and wherever you are on life's journey, you're welcome here. Now more than ever, it's important for us to realize that this is so much more than a motto or a clever tagline. It's a reflection on the life and ministry of Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, who more than likely offered the same salutation to countless others he encountered. The diverse many who rarely lived in the mainstream or in accordance with societal and religious norms and requirements. In story after story, we read how Jesus encountered others. All are welcome, just wasn't enough. So this anniversary of your decision to make official what grew in your hearts and minds over time reminds whoever you are that your welcome is wide, that your extravagant welcome is intended for all. We are learning we need to be more informed and specific with our language, more tangible with our actions, more bold with our message. So we covenant with each other as well as those in our community who identify as LGBT or Q. May we remember today and every day these dear ones are so much more than the initials used to refer to them, or, at worst, attempting to categorize them. It should be said, we've learned a lot from our friends who founded the Open and Affirming Coalition in the United Church of Christ, who have advocated for the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender community in our denomination and beyond, who have provided guidance and support to congregations as they endeavor to bear authentic witness to God's extravagant welcome for all. Founded in 1972, the coalition has helped the United Church of Christ reach benchmarks and mark milestones on our journey toward inclusion and justice for all our LGBTQ siblings. In 1985, our General Synod passed the first resolution advocating for the civil rights of these citizens. Now that was 35 years ago. Think about how different your lives were 35 years ago. Think about how different your televisions were. Then in 2005, the coalition led us to the church's historic affirmation of marriage equality. They have been a catalyst for change in the collective conscience of the United Church of Christ and a champion for the LGBTQ population's right to participate fully in ministry and fellowship. Now, even in the 21st century, the Open and Affirming Coalition of the United Church of Christ faces new challenges. You see, there are nearly 4,900 UCC churches in our country, and about 1,400 of them have done what you have done, making the bold and public covenant to be authentically open and affirming. That's the good news. The other news is that nearly 2/3 of UCC churches in our country have not yet traveled the journey to publicly affirm this extravagant welcome. And the sad news is that LGBTQ youth are still facing a staggering and disproportionate threat of bullying, rejection, and even suicide in our communities. Transgender citizens are still being denied basic civic rights. And just this month, we are seeing how discrimination remains a provocative issue, even making its way to the Supreme Court this month, Pride Month. So your congregation's public affirmation and covenant sends a life-changing, life-affirming, maybe even life-saving message for many. It makes me think of stories I heard in Sunday school as I was growing up about the early followers of Jesus, the real trailblazers in the first 2 centuries, who were persecuted for who they were. Their beliefs and behaviors were in sharp contrast to the norm. The more authentic they were to their lifestyle, the more they were treated as outcasts. Like so many today, they looked for a signal, a sign of welcome and safety among kindred spirits. You may be familiar with the Greek term ichthys. The English translation is fish. And the ichthys became a symbol of safety for early Christians as they traveled the catacombs in ancient Rome. The symbol looked like a fish as it consisted of 2 intersecting arcs. This symbol, the sign of the fish, was adopted by 1st and 2nd century believers as a secret symbol of safety, like-mindedness, of beloved community. First appearing in Christian art and literature in the 2nd century AD, that fish symbol became popular and its use spread widely in the later centuries. The ancient Christians, during their persecution by the Roman Empire in the first few centuries after Christ, used the fish symbol to mark safe meeting places, to distinguish friends from foes. When a Christian met a stranger on the road, she might draw one part of the arc of the fish in an outline on the dirt, hoping that the stranger she encountered would draw the other arc, providing the relief that they were in safe, good company. You know that fish were prominently featured in the New Testament. They were given symbolic meaning several times in the Gospels. Jesus' 12 apostles were fishermen. His commissions started with, "I will make you fishers of men." Of great significance, I believe, is the story of the feeding of the 5,000, which is included in all 4 Gospels. And the story elements are similar in each. Essentially, the crowds were following Jesus on foot from town to town. And when he would land in a gathering and see a large crowd, he was moved with compassion to come to them and heal their sick. Now, on one particular occasion, as evening approached, the disciples came to him and they said, "Jesus, we're in a remote place. It's getting late. You should send these crowds away, back to their villages, so they can get food." But Jesus chose not to send them away, and rather directed the disciples to find something for them to eat. Well, the disciples proclaimed that they only had 5 loaves and a couple of fishes. And Jesus asked that they bring those elements to him. And he invited people to sit in groups on the hillside. Well, that action is pretty familiar to us, because Jesus took the loaves and the fish, and he looked to heaven, gave thanks, and broke them to share them. And then he gave the food to the disciples, and the disciples shared the food among the people. And the gospel story tells us that they all ate, that they were all satisfied, and there were even leftovers. Now, there are many of us who believe this miracle was more about a change of heart, a change in attitude, an opening of generosity and extravagance of spirit than actual food. We learn from this story that it's about what you do with what you have. And those who gathered with Jesus had their hearts moved by what he had to share. Their mindset changed. They came to each other in abundance and safety. I believe that the people in the crowds then and the people in our crowds today can be moved, can be changed by what we see in the life of Jesus. Generosity, affirmation, inclusion, extravagant welcome, whoever you are, wherever you are on life's journey. We are in this together. We are one. Our spiritual ancestors from those first centuries to even more modern times blazed the trails we're following. They set a course for all of us. Think about the brave and bold actions of our UCC ancestors who journeyed a path of evolution toward inclusion. Remember our firsts, the pilgrims seeking spiritual freedom, anticipating that there would always be more truth and light to come. Or those first Congregationalists who joined the abolitionists in the 1700s, or who joined the Great Awakening in the 1700s. Think about those who were the first to publish the poetry of an African American woman, the first to ordain an African American, to ordain a woman, to ordain an openly gay person. May we continue to proclaim the good news from Galatians we heard earlier this morning. By faith, we are in relationship with the still speaking God. We are called to an evolved, mature faith, the one we see in Jesus as the fulfillment of God's original covenant. In this beloved community, there can be no division. All are equal. Please pray with me. Gracious God, you love all that you have created, and you celebrate the diversity of your creation. Throughout your history with your people, you have reminded us that those whom the world sees as the least are the greatest in your eyes. We ask that you give us the grace to affirm and celebrate with all our sisters and brothers as they choose to live authentically in a changing world. Teach us, O God, to honor and celebrate the gifts of all, and help us to create a world in which gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender people are loved, accepted, nurtured, celebrated, and extravagantly welcomed in your beloved community. We ask this, O Lord, in your many names. Amen.